Week 7 of the Indoor Football League has concluded, and we got some really great games, some good rematches, and today I'm going to be diving into all of that. In the first game, we had Iowa play at Green Bay. Green Bay was 11.5 point favorites. I thought that Iowa was going to come away with this win, and they nearly did, but the game felt like it shouldn't have been as close as it probably was. In my opinion, the Blizzard were obviously the better team. The game was pretty close for a while. There were a few not great calls that went in favor of the Barnstormers later in the game, but Green Bay was able to come out with a victory. Quarterback Max Mailer went 7 for 15, 83 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 2 more on the ground, continuing to play as we've seen him play all season. Green Bay really looks like a playoff team with him as a starting quarterback. Running the ball, they continued to not have the running backs do entirely too much. Mailer continuing to be that number one threat on the ground. At wide receiver, Demetrius Moore caught 2 touchdowns, and Harry Ballard III caught another one. Overall, the Blizzard played a solid game defensively. Didn't allow too many points, only 33. Ravarius Rivers did have 10 tackles and 3 breakups, which was a really good stat line. And then kicker Andrew Mevis had 2 field goals made with a long of 41, which is his long on the season. They did have a kicking change last week whenever they played the Storm, starting Mevis, and he has been definitely an upgrade in the field goal game since Mason Laramie went 0 for 9. Jalen Cagle continues to be one of the better kick returners in the IFL. Kind of feels like whenever you kick it off to him, you're probably going to get the ball in your in the other team's territory. Now you look at the Barnstormers. Kyle King started again. Darius James Peterson has not played in 2 weeks, but Kyle King is playing pretty solid. He has a 7-2 ratio right now, and actually more passing yards than Darius James Peterson. 2 touchdowns and 1 interception in this game. Running back Rob Washington continuing to be a really good player on the ground, scoring another rushing touchdown. I believe that's 4 games in a row that he scored a rushing touchdown. Wide receiver Queon Williams continues to be one of the top receivers in the league. He is pretty high on the receiving yards leaderboard right now. He pulls in 7 receptions for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then another touchdown on the ground. He had a great game. Defensively, they were solid. There wasn't one guy that just stood out too much statistically. And then kicker Gabriel Ree played a pretty solid game, kicking 2 field goals and making all of his points after touchdown. So overall, I don't think much has changed for either one of these teams. Iowa's now 0-5. They're not looking good. Kyle King may be a better starter at the quarterback position than Darius James Peterson, but I don't think their season is too salvageable at this point, and Green Bay is still looking like a playoff team. In the next game, the Gunslingers upset the undefeated Frisco Fighters. This is the second game in a row that the Gunslingers have won. They won in a high-scoring game like they had to because their defense really can't do anything. But I mean, in this game, it was decently understandable. You're playing former MVP TJ Edwards at quarterback and one of the better offenses in the IFL. This was a fantastic game and a huge upset for the Gunslingers. Sam Castronova continuing to be one of the best quarterbacks in the IFL, arguably having the best case for an MVP season with his 28-1 ratio, which is absolutely insane. And then 6 touchdowns on the ground. In this game, he threw for 8 touchdowns and 222 yards. They continued to not do too much in the run game, but they're not a very run-heavy team at all. They mostly just like to let Castronova sling the ball. Again, wide receivers, all of them catching touchdowns. Austin Upshaw, DJ Myers, Khalid Rashad, and Naquan Murray, all of them having really good games. They have a really good receiving core, just like Massachusetts. The defense, I mean, you're allowing 52 points, so you're not going to... They didn't do too great, and they haven't really done that great all season long. They have had a lot of players either get injured or cut or whatever it may be, but Svan Davenport did force a big interception in this game. Kicker T.C. Stevens went 6 for 8 on PATs and did miss one field goal. Now you look at the fighter statistics. T.J. Edwards, 6 total touchdowns, 142 in the air, which is his second highest on the season, and then 4 touchdowns on the ground, which is exactly what you'd expect from him. That makes 18 total rushing touchdowns on the year. Running back Jimmy Smith ran for another one. I mean, the ground game was dominant for Frisco like it has been all year. They're one of the best rushing teams in the IFL, and they continue to do so against the Gunslingers, but unfortunately for them, they were not able to keep up just enough with the great passing attack of the Gunslingers. Devin McCoy did catch both of the touchdowns for the Fighters. This defense is solid, but they did allow 54 points, which is absolutely huge, and definitely why they lost. Defensive back Kobe Perry did have 12 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. Kicker Brad Namder had 4 for 4 points after touchdown, which is solid, and then Lionel McConnell was the only returner for the Fighters in this game. So overall, I mean, it's a tough loss for Frisco, but I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal. They're still 4-1. They're still a championship caliber team in this league. I think if they play again, I don't see the Gunslingers being able to do that again. Frisco's defense is pretty solid. They didn't really play like it in this game, but they are a very good team. In the next game, the Massachusetts Pirates got a much-needed win after losing by 11 last week to the 1-2 Quad City Steamwheelers. Massachusetts was favored by 10 in this game. These should be switched, but Massachusetts was favored by 10 in this game, and they won by 5. This was a pretty close game for a while, and then Massachusetts was able to kind of pull away at the end, and then the Storm were able to score at the very end to make the score look a little closer than it actually was. But the Pirates did this without starting quarterback Alejandro Benefield, who's been really good for them this season. They started quarterback Connor Dagenhart. He had a really good game. He did struggle with 2 interceptions, so turnover issues. But this was his first start, and they threw 4 touchdowns in this game. The run game was pretty good for the Pirates, like it has been all year. Jamie Robinson ran for 2 more touchdowns. Wide receivers Tio Redding and Thomas Owens both caught 2 touchdowns. Isaac Zico did not have a catch in this game. Defensively, they were solid. They racked up a couple sacks, multiple tackles for loss, and linebacker Calvin Bunders had 10 tackles in this game. Nothing too special in the kicking and returning game, though, for the Pirates. The Storm, Billy Hall continuing to be just really good with his legs, running for 2 more touchdowns in this game. He's really done very well for the Storm this year. It's just unfortunate for them that they have not yet to win a game. He's playing like a pretty solid quarterback, throwing 3 more touchdowns in this game. Running-wise, they didn't have too much outside of Hall. Kentrez Bell and Carlos Thompson both caught a touchdown, but Bell was the primary receiver in this game. On the defensive side of the ball, you got Amin Black having 10 tackles, and then 2 interceptions forced, one by Kendricks Gladney Jr. and one by Cedric Williams. The kicking and returning game was solid. Cameron Harrell had 111 returning yards off of just 4 kickoff returns. So overall, for both these teams, uh, the Pirates are still one of the best teams, and it feels like the Storm can upset someone. It really does. They're not as bad as their record may indicate, being 0-5. They can. I think they will upset someone uh, later in the season, maybe even next week. They're a solid football team. And then Massachusetts, of course, being a championship caliber team, up there with uh, Frisco, Bay Area, and San Diego. The Duke City Gladiators went to the Vegas Nighthawks and were beat pretty soundly. The Nighthawks, in this game, Jerome Johnson played. He started the game, went 3 for 9, throwing for only 30 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, running for another one. But he's been really good outside of this game all season long. But they then decided to put in George Reyna, who threw for 3 touchdowns. Reyna had a really good game. But I did have questions about the whole Johnson situation. You definitely want to let him stay in and struggle a little bit after the season he's been having. You don't want to mess up his confidence or anything. So I was pretty confused. I don't know if he got hurt. I don't think he did. So I was pretty confused watching this game. Reyna's a solid quarterback. Maybe it was just the scheme they wanted Reyna in, but Jerome Johnson's playing very, very good football this year, and so it was pretty confusing as to why they decided to take him out of the game. He did throw 2 interceptions, but those were the only interceptions he has thrown all year long, as you can see over here. The running game, I mean, there wasn't much outside of the quarterbacks. At wide receiver, Quentin Randolph caught 2 more touchdowns. He's having a really good year, and so is Caleb Hawley, who also caught 2 more. Linebacker Mikel Calhoun had a really good game with 11 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks. The defense as a whole played really good, but I mean, that's not. I mean, it is impressive, but you are also playing the Duke City Gladiators, who have been struggling all season long. They did have a punt return touchdown by Jericho Flowers in this game to help extend the lead. For Duke City, in this game, Alfonso Howard started. He didn't have too great of a game. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions. So you're just continuing to see a quarterback carousel for the Gladiators, running the ball wise with Jeff Carr. Couldn't do anything either. Howard was the main rusher for the Gladiators, and he only got 38 yards off of 13 carries and was sacked 2 more times. So Duke City they do not look or feel like a very good team this year. They need to do something, but I don't know what happened with Kilgo. I'm pretty sure he's hurt, but he was a very bright spot for this team, and I hope he returns for them. Defensive lineman Malik McDowell did have a pick 6 as a defensive lineman, which is pretty cool, but that didn't really help too much for the Gladiators as they lost by multiple scores in this game. So the next game, we had Northern Arizona go to Tucson and win. The Wranglers in this game played pretty good game. Quarterback Joshua Jones, I mean, another one of the really good quarterbacks that are playing this year. Jones has 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the year, and he definitely helped his case with 190 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 78 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. The receiver room, 5 different guys caught passes, multiple guys catching touchdowns. It was a very good day overall. The receiving leader was Kobe White with 79 yards and 1 touchdown. Defensively, they were solid. You can see the Wranglers have a pretty set defense because same guys playing out there, getting tackles every single game, and not having a ton of turnover and injuries like some of the other teams that we've looked at. For the Sugar Schools, Malik Mitchell still out. Torrance Gibson didn't play this game, but Taz Wilson did. They acquired him. I believe he was on another team earlier this year, but I do not remember who it was. I could look, but I think that would just waste time. But Taz Wilson did have a okay game. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. In his first start for the Sugar Schools, I don't know when he got there, but it had to be relatively soon, or relatively recent. So I think it was a solid showing by Wilson. They were in this game 100%. The final score was just a field goal difference. And if Mitchell is going to continue to be out, I would not have any problems really with Wilson getting this start over Gibson. Because, I mean, the Sugar Schools, they are not a horrible team. Their record is not great, but they're not that bad of a team. Running the ball, Mike Jones having another okay day. He had 60 overall yards and a rushing touchdown. There wasn't too much going on in the wide receiver room. Only 4 different guys catching passes, and Demario McCall being that lead receiver for the Sugar Schools with 64 yards and the touchdown. The defense was solid, but this was a good game. 2 decently evenly matched teams. I think the Sugar Schools, like I said, are better than the record may indicate, and it goes to show why the line was only 5.5 points apart. I did pick Northern Arizona in this game, but I definitely could have saw Tucson upsetting. If Malik Mitchell starts for them, there's a solid chance that they win that game. In the next game, Tulsa put up 72 at the Steamwheelers, which was crazy. Steamwheelers went into this game favored by 7 points, but that did not matter for Tulsa as they would put up 72 points. Quarterback Daniel Smith threw for 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards, and ran for 5 more touchdowns. They didn't have too much on the ground outside of Smith with Jared Ware Jr., but wide receiver Alexis Rosero had 6 receptions, 123 yards, and 3 touchdowns. All 3 of the receiving touchdowns from Smith. The defense didn't really have to do much, but whenever your offense is putting up 72 points, they did allow 59, but again, the offense put up 72. Linebacker Jordan Jones had 12 more tackles to get his total to 39 tackles on the season. And Kareem Golden did force an interception. Michael Hall kicked 10 points after touchdown, making 9 of them, and then he did make a 36-yard long field goal. So overall, dominant, impressive performance by Tulsa. They're looking like a really solid team, especially after they were one of the worst in the league last year. Looking at the Steamwheelers, they started Judd Erickson again, and Erickson did not have too great of a game in the air. 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That's not awful. He did lose a fumble, though, and run for 2 more touchdowns. They did put up 59 points, but the defense allowed 72. So I don't think the offense was too much of an issue for the Steamwheelers. Not really. The reason they won, it was the defense allowing 70-plus points. So overall, Quad Cities just got to get that figured out. Last week they had a really big win, so they were in a letdown spot, and I did say that last week, and that's why I picked Tulsa to win this game. But it was really just impressive performance by the Oilers. In the next game, Bay Area went to San Diego and came out with a win. I really thought this series was going to be split, as these teams both played last week and Bay Area won that game close, and they did it again, winning by 1 point. Bay Area was favored in this game, but I picked San Diego to win this game. The Panthers, Daquan Neal was back in this game after not playing last game. He had 99 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 52 rushing yards, and a touchdown. He was definitely a really helpful player to have for the Panthers, and probably why they won this game. Running wise, Stafford Anderson started again for the Panthers and did not have a great game like he did last week. Last week he really contributed to that victory with Harper starting as quarterback, but I think since Neal is back, you can see he didn't have as big of a role in that offense. Receiving wise, JT Stokes, 6 receptions, 42 yards, and a touchdown. And then Jaziri Peterson catching another touchdown. Defense really played well, only allowing 32 points and forcing a couple turnovers. 1 interception by linebacker BJ Tuafili, which was brought back for a touchdown. Another interception by Tyler Watson. Both were huge in this game, and obviously really, really helped Bay Area win this game, as it was only a 1-point game. If BJ doesn't take that back to the house, they may not win this game. Kicking-wise, Craig Peterson had a solid game. 2 for 5, which is not fantastic, but 41-yard long field goal. Bay Area 5-0, looking like the best team in the IFL, and that's why they've been ranked number 1 since the beginning of the poll, the coaches poll. For the Strike Force, Nate Davis, 4 touchdowns, 2 costly interceptions. Didn't have a run game going at all with Chance Bell. He actually lost a fumble. The defense played pretty solid. They allowed 33 points as a team, but as I said before, one of those was a defensive touchdown by Bay Area. Receiving-wise, they had a ton of guys catch passes, and 3 different guys catch touchdowns. Arthur Jackson III catching 2 of those touchdowns. Linebacker Sherrod Williams had 10 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. Not a good day kicking by Stevie Artigue, and Elijah Lilly did have a big kickoff return touchdown for the Strike Force. But overall, I mean, the Strike Force dropped in the coaches poll to 7. They're not the 7th best team in the league. They're better than both of these guys right here. They're probably number 5. They are definitely a top 5 team in this league, and they lost 2 games to the number 1 team in the league, both in very, very close games. So I don't think they should have dropped to 7. They do have 2 losses, so it is somewhat understandable, but they are still 100%, especially with Nate Davis, a top 5 team in the league. In the final game of Week 7, we had the Jacksonville Sharks go to the Arizona Rattlers and lose by 20 points to fall to 0-5. This was a much-needed victory for the Arizona Rattlers, and it was definitely helped by the return of Dalton Sneed, who I have been hoping would come back for about 3 weeks now. They've really needed him. The defense actually played solid in this game for Arizona. That's been another really big part of why they haven't been doing too well this season. But Sneed comes in, first game back from injury, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 more touchdowns on the ground. He's playing pretty solidly. He used his legs a lot more than we saw him do in the first game of the season, but he did throw an interception, but it's not too big of a deal. Running-wise, Shannon Brooks had 3 touchdowns on the ground. They were able to effectively pass and run the ball and destroy the winless Sharks. Wide receiver Glenn Gibbons Jr. did have 7 receptions for 49 yards, and he also lost a fumble. Linebacker Connor Taylor had 8 tackles and 2 quarterback hits. And then in the kicking game, Dawson Evans went 6 for 7 PATs, 1-for-1 field goal with a long of 35. The Sharks are just continuing to struggle. They started Fred Payton Jr. for the second week in a row. I assume Blunt is still hurt. I know Eddie Brill Jr. is no longer with the team. He didn't have too good of a game whenever he did play, though. They also let N'Kosi Perry out of Florida Atlantic University play a little bit in this game, but he did not do anything, going 0 for 4 in the passing game. But Fred Payton Jr. had a pretty solid game. 14 for 20 is not bad at all. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Running-wise, Stanley Williams, solid game, 2 touchdowns on the ground. And then Jeremiah Payton and Cameron Solomon both having good games. But the defense letting up a ton of points, 55 points to the Rattlers and Dalton Sneed in his return. The Sharks are just, after losing Castronova after their championship in the NAL last season, they're not going to be anything this year in this league. They've had so much turnover with their roster. They've had trouble with the quarterback situation. I just really don't see the Sharks doing anything in this league, and hopefully they win 5 games. I mean, but even then, I'm not sure. I'm not going to say the year's lost, but I don't have much hope, if any, for the Sharks this upcoming season. Looking forward to Week 8 games, we have the winless Sharks go to the Tulsa Oilers. I think Tulsa's going to win this game. Maybe the Sharks do something. Maybe they get their first win of the season. But I think it's far more likely that Tulsa wins this game. Now, the second game, Sioux Falls playing Green Bay at home. 100% I could see Billy Hull getting the Storm their first win of the season. I've been on Green Bay losing games the past 2 weeks in a row, and I've been wrong. They've been favored in both of those games, and I was like, well, surely they'll drop one of these because that just feels like something they do. But no, they went 2-0 in those weeks that I picked against them, so I'm not picking them against them again. Although I do really think the Storm have a good chance to try and upset in this game. In the third game, it's a rematch from last week. After the Fighters just lost to San Antonio, now they play at San Antonio again. I think Frisco's going to win this game. I think the defense is probably going to step up and give San Antonio their 4th loss of the season. Their record is not that great, but they've had a really tough schedule, and Frisco will probably get their 5th win of the season. But, I mean, it will still be interesting to see if Castronova will be able to pull out 2 wins in a row against TJ Edwards. We're having another 0-5 team, the Barnstormers, but they're at home against the Quad City Steamwheelers. Steamwheelers had a horrible game this past week, allowing 72 points to the Oilers. And the Barnstormers still 0-5. They did play the Blizzard pretty close last week, so it'll be an interesting game, but I am going with the Steamwheelers. In the second to last game, this is the game of the week. This is the game I'm really looking forward to. We have the undefeated 5-0 Vegas Nighthawks go to the undefeated 5-0 Bay Area Panthers. Jerome Johnson, Daquan Neal. Really fun matchup, but I'm going with the home team, the best team, the Bay Area Panthers. And then finally, we have another really good game. Northern Arizona Wranglers 4-1 versus the 3-2 San Diego Strikeforce. I think San Diego's going to bounce back after back-to-back losses against the Panthers. I think that they are better than the Wranglers, and I think they'll prove that. So it'll be super fun to watch. Really interesting games, especially these two. But these will also tell us a lot too. But if I was going to watch some games, I would 100% watch these two. And I think that is all, because the players of the week have yet to be announced. So thank you for watching, and I will be back next week.